Back in March of 2026, a truly devastating flood just slammed Russia's Dagestan Republic. Now, you might think, okay, a terrible storm, but this was not just some random act of nature. Believe it or not, the clues, the warnings for this exact kind of catastrophe, they were actually published 4 years earlier in a scientific study. So the big question is, how did a warning on paper turn into such a tragic reality on the ground? Well, let's connect the dots.
Okay, let's just start with this number, 500,000. At the height of this crisis, that's how many people across Dagestan were suddenly plunged into darkness. No power. We're not just talking about some heavy rain here. This was a storm that brought an entire region to its knees.
So let's really get a sense of what was happening on the ground. When these record-breaking rains hit, the situation just spiraled out of control with terrifying speed. And yeah, this was way beyond just a bad storm. You had local officials confirming just how severe it was. One, the acting head of the Khasavyurt district, called it a very critical level. I mean, in his area, entire villages were just completely underwater, sparking these desperate rescue missions.
And the human cost was just staggering. It went so far beyond the power outages. I mean, you had this huge, widespread crisis just unfolding. States of emergency were being declared in major cities. We're talking about over 3,300 people evacuated, more than 1,000 of them kids. And think about this, even hospitals had to be abandoned as the water just kept rising.
You know, whenever a disaster of this scale hits, there's always that one big question that hangs in the air. Could we, should we, have seen this coming?
Well, the official story was pretty clear. They were framing this as a total freak event. The regional governor himself called the rainfall unprecedented. The message was, this was a complete surprise, an anomaly nobody could have possibly predicted.
But was it? That's the real question here, isn't it? Was this disaster really just a bolt from the blue? Or were there clues, maybe hidden away in climate data, that suggested something like this wasn't just possible, but was actually becoming probable?
Okay, to answer that, we actually have to go back in time, but not decades, just a few years, to 2022, and a scientific paper that got published. You see, this study, it gives us the crucial context that was completely missing from all those frantic headlines back in 2026.
So, get this. 4 full years before the deluge, scientists were already digging into more than 50 years of climate data for this exact region. They weren't just looking at random storms, no, they were tracking deep, fundamental shifts in Dagestan's climate.
And here's the absolute key point. What they found was undeniable proof that the region was getting warmer. And, this is the kicker, that warming was happening fastest in late winter and early spring, February and March, the exact time of year the 2026 flood hit. This wasn't just a hunch, it was a statistically solid, confirmed trend.
And just look at how dramatic this trend was. The study showed that since 1976, the temperature in March was rising faster than any other month of the year. We're talking a climb of 0.8 degrees Celsius every single decade. It's like the climate was being slowly wound up, primed for something big.
Okay, and this is where it gets really critical. It wasn't just about the heat. The very nature of the rain itself was changing. The data pointed to this huge shift away from lots of smaller, gentler rainfalls to fewer rainy days, but with much more intense, violent downpours. The whole system was basically being loaded to deliver bigger, harder punches, especially in March.
All right, so we have the science. Now let's connect those dots directly to the absolute devastation we saw on the ground in March 2026.
So what happens when you take decades of warming and these new, more intense rainfall patterns, and you throw one single record-breaking storm into the mix? Right, that's the key. That 2022 paper showed how the long-term trends basically set the stage. They created the perfect conditions for a big storm to become a full-blown catastrophe.
It wasn't just one thing going wrong. It was a complete chain reaction, a cascade of disaster. First, you get the record rainfall, supercharged by that warmer atmosphere. Then the ground just can't handle it. It's totally overwhelmed, leading to massive flooding. That water then triggers these destructive mudflows rushing down from the mountains, a hazard, by the way, that was specifically mentioned in that 2022 study. And the final step, all that water and mud just demolishes critical infrastructure.
And the damage was just immense. We're talking about the main Caucasus highway completely blocked by mudslides. A railway bridge literally collapsed, cutting off a vital transport line. And remember those 500,000 people without power? Well, in the capital city,
3 of the main power centers were completely flooded. That's why.
So what happens next? After the water is gone and the immediate crisis is over, what's left? For Dagestan, this disaster has forced a really tough conversation about what the future is going to look like.
And you can already see the thinking starting to shift. It's moving away from just emergency response and towards long-term adaptation. Officials are now drawing up plans for major new engineering projects, things like structures to hold back mudflows, to protect cities from the exact kind of threats that study warned about. It's basically an admission that, yep, this is the new reality. So it all comes down to this, doesn't it? The science predicted the risk, the storm showed the reality. I mean, that 2022 paper, it didn't have the exact date circled on a calendar, of course, but it clearly laid out the growing danger. The 2026 flood just turned that risk into a brutal, devastating fact. And it leaves you with a really chilling final thought. Is Dagestan, and really, are any of us, ready for our new climate?